This is Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It's hour number 2 of Cashing Out right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We've got a tremendous hour coming up for you as we're going to be hitting a little bit of everything in terms of playoffs. We'll talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs as we do have ourselves one really good game that's going to be happening on Easter Sunday between the Rockets and the Golden State Warriors. Not going to go as much in on the double-figure spread games as we talked a little bit about that with our good friend Jim Turvey of Roto Grinders in the previous segment. A big thanks to him, but we do have a lot of baseball that's going to be coming up on this Easter Sunday as well. All 30 teams are going to be in action, so we're going to be addressing that. And then in 15 minutes, we're going to be taking a look at the NHL playoffs as Jonathan Davis, he does a tremendous job here at VSiN as well. He is on SiriusXM and the host of the Ice Cap over there. He's going to be joining me. We're going to take a look at what we all got here on Saturday, especially the Colorado Avalanche, putting up 3 goals in the final 10 or so minutes of that win that they had over the Dallas Stars, being able to get the job done by a count of 5-1 out there. So we'll be talking about that, look at the Golden Knights versus the Minnesota Wild series, and so much more. And I mean, this is just me. I'm not too much of a NHL bettor personally, but the NHL playoffs just absolutely tremendous in terms of the just passion that you get out of these teams. I just really think that you get a really good product in general, and Jonathan, he's one of the best in the business. So you want to be sticking around for that in about 15 minutes, and the reason why you want to stick around here at VSiN is the fact that we've got so many hard workers that do a tremendous job night in, night out of giving you guys the shows that you all know and love, whether you're listening on the radio side of things over at SiriusXM channel 158. Might be listening to the podcast after the fact as well over at vsin.com/podcast. And the man that is responsible for all the great audio that you are hearing, keeping it all nice, crisp, and clean, that would be our good friend Chris. And then if you're watching on vsin.com, the VSiN Watch app, just wherever you're able to get us, as I know that we're on YouTube TV as well. It's very difficult to be able to keep all the, shall we say, odds in line, and yet somehow, some way, our guys, John, Al, and Jarens, they do an absolutely tremendous job, and they've got the hardest position here at VSiN, making me look halfway presentable in a moving picture format, and somehow, some way, there's no broken cameras here. So we give them a big ode to their great success there. And then my producer Hutton, he somehow, some way keeps me all in line with regards to this show. He does a tremendous job. Big thanks to everyone behind the scenes. They are the absolute best in the business, and because they're doing such great work, now I need to do some good work and try to be able to find you guys some winners on the board. First things first, we were talking about that Warriors versus Houston Rockets game in the previous segment with our good friend Mr. Turvey. So how about if we do take a look at this game, and I'll be with you guys over on Live Bet Sunday as well tomorrow. So I'll be taking a look at this game live because I was mentioning it with Jim, and this is the way that I'm going to be playing it with regards to this. I'll be talking about this game, but I'm going to be looking for live betting opportunities when it comes to Warriors and the Houston Rockets. And the reason why I look for live betting opportunities, and I'm not going to necessarily be taking the -1.5, +1.5, what have you, with regards to the spread pregame, is that I believe that you just get so much better opportunity in terms of betting, in terms of the NBA playoffs. You get so much volatility. We were seeing it, and he was mentioning it as well, Jim Turvey, in the previous segment, what we were seeing in that Knicks versus Detroit Pistons games. You get more games like that than games that aren't like that. Like, I always have a philosophy, when you bet on the NBA, the team that you bet on at some point in the half that you're watching is going to be up or down 10 points, most likely both in the same half. Like, it's just absolutely wild what we see out of them, but that said, you do have a Warriors team that has been able to pick up a lot of steam, but you've got a Rockets team that's been just so rock solid this season as well. Just everything has been working out so well for them. You do have a few injuries with regards to Rockets front, but I mean, they're more like depth pieces, guys that they weren't going to be utilized too much in this game in general. But that said, when I take a look at this spot, I lean a little bit more to what you're going to be able to get out of the Golden State Warriors just because they've had so much success on the road all throughout this run. And with the way that the Golden State Warriors has been able to play in the second half of the season, it's been incredible. Now, obviously, the coaching of the Houston Rockets, that has been really second to none this season. I believe that they have done less with more out of any team out there in the NBA, and Jalen Green coming into his own, really being able to live up to that moniker of the number 2 pick that he was taken with a few seasons ago. I feel like that has been big for them as well. Has been a little bit cold in the last few games, but they were resting him. He was only playing like 20 or so minutes, so and they were just making sure that he was able to find his bearings. So I don't make too much out of that. But that said, with the way that the Golden State Warriors have been looking ever since the trade deadline, they have looked like such a fearsome team in general that I do stick a lot of stock into that. This does feel like the Golden State Warriors, maybe not from when they were peak Splash Brothers or anything like that, but it does feel like a more advanced form of the Golden State Warriors than what we have seen in a very, very long time, with the way that Steph Curry has just been reborn in general, the way that Jimmy Butler has fit like a glove for the team. And that's a big thing with Jimmy Butler. Whenever he goes to a new team, it always feels like there's a great honeymoon stage where everything is going great, everything feels brand spanking new, and then when you get a few years into it and then you bring in the contract situation, what have you, that's when things become less than savory. The Miami Heat know all too well about that, but right now you've got a very motivated, a guy that is wanting to be able to prove his worth in Jimmy Butler, and that has been big for the team. And just all the pieces are mixing and matching quite well together, like the way that Buddy Hield has been able to fit with this team and actually played all 82 games. So shout out to him. You don't find that very often in this day and age of the NBA. I mean, he has been rock solid for the team as well, and I know that we've had a few people on this show. I believe that Turvey was mentioning this as well, taking a look at Kevon Looney in terms of his rebounding prop. I think that that's interesting, and we have noticed in past postseasons when the Warriors have been able to make a run, Kevon Looney is not a guy that's going to go out there and give you a whole bunch of points or anything like that, but he is a guy that is able to give you some rebounding as well. So I do think that there's a lot of intrigue on this front. Obviously, with Kevon Looney has been a guy that's been very experienced in the playoffs as well, so you've got a lot that is going to be going on in this game. Personally, I'm looking for a live betting opportunity. Perhaps the Golden State Warriors get down in the first half and then they have one of those just famous third quarters where they're able to go into inferno mode. So that's personally what I'm taking a look at there, and I would be hoping that maybe you get a little bit of a slower first half, so that way you get the Warriors getting it going in the third quarter and a little bit of a feel it out sort of process, because the Rockets, they are one of your more supreme defenses in all the NBA, and I do think that it's going to take the Warriors a little bit of time to be able to figure it out. So I do think that we can find a little bit of value on the over, and I do think that with the Warriors, they're currently just about even money. Some places you might be able to find like a plus 105 on that money line right now. I think that we could probably get a little bit better when it comes to an in-game opportunity, but those are the two that I'm going to be taking a look at. And something else I'm taking a look at, First Bet, in terms of horse racing, because the Triple Crown, it is coming up before we know it. First Bet, they've got you covered on all of it. Sign up right now for exclusive promotions and bet on hundreds of thrilling horse races every single day right from your phone or computer. That's over at firstbet.com. That's the number one, stbet.com. Utilize the promo code of VSIN200, VSIN200. That gives you a 20% rebate on all of your wagers for the first 60 days up to $200. You don't want to miss out. Start betting over at firstbet.com today, as it is cashing out with myself, Greg Eaps Peterson. And how about if we do talk about a little bit more on the MLB front as well? Because when I take a look at the other games in the NBA playoffs, I'll still be certainly taking a look at some live opportunities, but we've got just a very strange slate in general, where you've got that tremendous Warriors versus Houston Rockets game, but then you've got a line of right around about 13.5 to 14 in terms of the Celtics and the Magic. You've got the Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers right now with a line of about 12.5, and then about a 13 to 13.5 line in terms of the OKC Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies. You just don't typically see that big of a demonstrative, shall we say, spread in terms of playoffs. So I do think that makes things just a little bit more fascinating in general to be able to take a look at. And certainly with regards to baseball, we do have ourselves some tight money lines to be at, and I think that this game is going to be very fascinating for this Sunday, as you've got yourself this game between the Atlanta Braves and the Minnesota Twins, with it being Joe Ryan going up against Grant Holmes. The Atlanta Braves, after they started out 5-13 to start the season, have finally been able to get things online. Back-to-back wins for them, and right now they're about minus 120. Totals hovering between 7.5 and 8. And with Joe Ryan, I just always have my trepidations with him on the road. He's a really good strikeout pitcher for his career. He gets right around about 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. He doesn't really walk a lot of guys, but when he misses his spot, he misses it really, really bad, as he gives up about 1.5 home runs per 9 innings for the entirety of his career in a road environment. Meanwhile, for Grant Holmes, he sort of went from being a starter to being a reliever, back to being a starter, and he's been solid in all those roles for his career. Less than 3 walks per 9 innings. Command has been a little bit of an issue in the small sample size that we've got this far this season, but Holmes has been able to do a nice job supplying there. And for the Atlanta Braves, it does feel like the offense is finally starting to get online. If you have taken a look at the advanced numbers of the Atlanta Braves over the last few seasons in general, you notice that they just haven't necessarily gotten what they deserve. This bunch has a lot of guys that are barreling up balls, what have you, and they're just going nowhere. Austin Riley has been able to break out of his funk. He's been able to do a solid job of moving the line, and keep in mind, they're still doing this without Ronald Acuna Jr. They're still doing this with a few moving parts, but what I thought was interesting about the game that we saw on Saturday, Alex Verdugo, he was able to give the team for his first game with the Atlanta Braves. He gave them a big giant nothing burger, and I know that Verdugo has been a little bit of an enigma because he spent some time with the Yankees, spent some time with the Boston Red Sox, had his ups, had his downs with both of those organizations, but now for Alex Verdugo, him coming in, being able to give this team for it is exactly what the doctor ordered, because they were giving some of these guys that should not be getting at bats, to call it what it is. Stuart Fairchild, Eli White, guys like this, some opportunities. That's not great. And obviously, Jurickson Profar being suspended 80 games was a little bit less than savory, to say the least, for the Atlanta Braves. But also do think that this Atlanta Braves bullpen, it is solid. It's not necessarily amazing, but Rossio Iglesias continues to be one of the better closers that you're going to find in the big leagues. Angel de los Santos, when he's rolling, he's rolling. When he's not rolling, he's not rolling. But guys like Dylan Lee, Tesbel Hernandez, these are guys I'm willing to buy in on. And for the Minnesota Twins, I actually do think that this is a pretty solid bullpen as well. Yohan Duran has just some of the best stuff that you're going to find in all of baseball. I like the fact that they pick up Danny Kalum in the offseason as well. I typically like Griffin Jacks, but I had the money line of the Minnesota Twins on Friday, and he got all jacked up. That was not good, to say the least, but that said, I do think that this is going to be a spot where we're able to find just a little bit of value on the Atlanta Braves. I know that the Minnesota Twins are going to be looking to try to avoid a sweep here, but with the Braves and the way that Grant Holmes has been so versatile, being able to get about a minus 120, wouldn't want to go much further than that, but I'm willing to take a shot on that money line. Did see my total just a little bit above an 8 as well. It feels like the Braves starting to finally get online with that offense, so going to be taking a look at the over as well. And coming up next, what we're taking a look at is the NHL playoffs with our good friend Jonathan Davis right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Cashing Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Great to be joined by this man on the Progressive Guest Line as we've got Jonathan Davis aboard. He does a tremendous job taking a look at all things hockey for us along SiriusXM, as he does a tremendous job over on that front as well. And Jonathan, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Greg. How's your Saturday night going?
My Saturday night is going pretty well, and Jonathan, we saw some great action on Saturday night as well. We saw the Colorado Avalanche scored 3 goals in the final 8 or so minutes of their game against the Dallas Stars to be able to get the job done out there. And just what did you take away from the Saturday games in general? Because I thought that was my biggest takeaway from Saturday, just what we were able to see late from the Colorado Avalanche to really put their foot on the throat of the Avalanche, or on the throat of the Dallas Stars, a Stars team that, albeit they're a little bit banged up going into this series.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that we saw in both games. Well, more so in the Winnipeg game. We had a late goal there for the game winner. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, look, the injuries to Dallas kind of mounted up there. Coaches and players felt they played their best game that they've played in about a month. And that may be so, but that's just not going to be good enough. And the one thing that is interesting with Dallas is that they've now lost, Greg, 8 straight game ones over the years. They do get off to a slow start. They've been able to rebound for the most part after that. But I just think that they've got their hands full. They're missing their number one defenseman, Miro Heiskanen. That's just it's a big pill to have to deal with. That for them to have to swallow not having him. I don't know if I could say it's equivalent to losing your starting quarterback, but there's a guy that plays almost 30 minutes of a 60-minute game. So that's hard to replace. And you've got a Colorado team that is supremely talented, and their talent just kind of overcame the Dallas Stars late in this game.
Yep, absolutely. I thought that was very striking what we saw out there, and we got ourselves 2 pretty quality games in terms of the Saturday slate, but I do think that the Sunday slate is really going to be where things get hot and heavy, and I do think that what we're going to be seeing out west is going to be a lot of fun because you've got a little bit of a reuniting in terms of the Golden Knights and the Minnesota Wild, with obviously the goaltender situation of Minnesota and being able to have all that you're going to be having out there. And for the Golden Knights, they're about minus 190 going up against Marc-Andre Fleury. How do you take a look at both game one in this Wild versus Vegas Golden Knights series and the series as a whole? Because you're going to have Marc-Andre Fleury, who is in last dance mode right now, going back to Vegas to really finish off his career.
Yeah, but I think, Greg, if Marc-Andre Fleury gets into any of these games, it's going to mean that the Minnesota Wild are not doing very well. He will not start in this series. He's going to be more of a cheerleader, for the most part, in this series, which is too bad for Fleury. But look, this is a Vegas team that has been the quietest 110-point team that I've seen in recent NHL history. So much attention on Winnipeg and Washington. Vegas is they're solid from top to bottom. Now, look, the Minnesota Wild come in finally healthy. This is a team that got off to a 20-8 start at the beginning of the year, but then they lost their star player, Kirill Kaprizov. He only played 41 of the 82 games. He came back and played the last 4 games of the regular season as Minnesota made it into the playoffs in their final game of the year. But look, I expect them to have their hands full against Vegas. It's a tough one for them. They've lost 5 straight to Vegas. They've lost 9 of their last 11 to Vegas. They lost the last playoff series they had to Vegas. Now, granted, a lot of Minnesota's got some new players on this roster, some good young players. I just think Vegas is far too deep, and I would expect this series not to go any more than 6 games.
Yep, I am right there with you. I know that Scott Seidenberg, who's on before me, does a great job with Live Bet Saturday. He was talking about taking an exact of this being perhaps a 5-game series as well, a gentleman's sweep, and I could very much see that as well as Jonathan Davis, who does tremendous work here at VSiN along with SiriusXM, joining me on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And then I do want to dive in on this one as well because the one team when it comes to the NHL playoffs that I always have trust issues with, and I think that you know why, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs because, man, they finally busted through a year or two ago. They finally won a playoff series, but, man, they have been that team that has always excelled in the regular season. Then when they get to the playoffs, they make like your buddy at the bar and they cannot close, and now they are about minus 155 to minus 162 favorites here in game number 1 against a upstart Ottawa Senators team. How do you take a look at this Toronto Maple Leafs team? Because I believe that they should be able to win this series and win this series handily, but I just still have so many trust issues with them not getting the job done in the playoffs in the past.
Well, it's a good point, Greg. I mean, they've been to the playoffs 9 straight years, and they've only won 1 series in the last 9 years. So, yeah, there are definite trust issues. They face an Ottawa team that swept them during the regular season. They won all 3 games. They outscored them. I believe it was 12-3. I think the Senators outscored them. So it's been tough. Now, I'm a little conflicted because when I look at the future prices on Toronto to win the Eastern Conference and to make it to the Stanley Cup Final, I think the prices are really good. I think you can get them at about plus 750. I think the value is really good. If they, but I do have a hard time trusting them. The way I'm approaching this series is I'm going to play Toronto. I'm going to play the series to go both 6 and 7 games at 2-1. I don't think Toronto walks through Ottawa, and I don't see Ottawa. If they're able to win this series, I can't see them winning in 5. So I took them both at 2-1, trying to get myself a small profit as long as this thing goes 6 games. I think there's some good player props in this one. Matthew Nyes of the Toronto Maple Leafs is a guy that's built for the playoffs. He had 29 goals in the regular season. He plays on the top line, plays on the number 1 power play unit. I've got him to score at least 3 goals in this series. You get that at about plus 170. So I think that's another way to approach it. Austin Matthews of the Maple Leafs. This is a guy that loves facing Ottawa goalie Linus Ullmark. He's got 11 goals in 10 games against Ullmark over his career. So I'm going to play him each game at plus 135 to score a goal because the only way you can even get plus money for Austin Matthews, on a futures bet in this series is you got to play him to score 4, and it's also at plus 135. So I didn't really like that. I've got a write-up coming up early tomorrow morning on VSiN.com where I break down all my props for the series and the game. But those are two that come to mind for me. And then on the Ottawa side, David Perron has been a really good playoff performer. He had 9 goals in 12 games. The last time he was in the playoffs, he's got 2 goals in the 4 games he's faced Leafs starting goalie Anthony Stolar. So I played him tomorrow for an anytime goal at about plus 460.
I think that those are all really good looks, and I do think that this is such an intriguing series because, again, we mentioned it. It feels like the Maple Leafs, even though they got swept during the regular season, they've got all this firepower, but man, when are they going to finally be able to break through? So it's going to be a very fascinating game, number 1, between these two teams. And then this one I think is a fun one as well. It's the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the New Jersey Devils, because the Devils, I feel like, have talent on their team, just hasn't necessarily come all together for them over the last, I'm going to call it, about 18 or so months. And with the Carolina Hurricanes, I think that there's a lot of people that don't know just how good that home ice advantage is for them. How do you take a look at this one with them right around minus $2 favorites?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Greg. It's the series that I care least about among the 8. I'm really not going to have a lot of action in this series. You know, you've got a New Jersey team that's missing their star player, Jack Hughes. That's a big loss for them. They're getting healthier on the blue line, although they're missing one of their top defensemen for this series, Jonas Siegenthaler. Easy for me to say. I just don't trust either goalie. You know, Jacob Markstrom came over. He was supposed to be kind of the savior for New Jersey. It's been a rough year for Markstrom. And on the other side, you've got Freddie Anderson and Pyotr Kochetkov. And, you know, for anyone who thinks that Carolina's problem is they can't score enough, I will come back and tell you that they can't get a save when it's needed most. And that's been Freddie Anderson's problem. Now, Carolina's been able to get through round 1 through the years. They haven't won a round 2 series in a couple of years. So, but for me, I just think that, you know, I may target some player props tomorrow, but for now, it's one that I'm not interested in getting involved in from a series play.
I don't blame you there. And a little bit more than a minute remaining. Any futures that you're taking a look at right now as the round 1 matchups are set and we're just getting started with these series?
Yeah, there are a couple. I mean, I mentioned Matthew Nye's name for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I would look at him for the playoff MVP, Conn Smythe. If Toronto gets there, I think he's got a really good shot at being the MVP. I think Pavel Dorofeev of the Vegas Golden Knights is another one. I know his odds at one point were 50-1. I've seen those numbers come down. Those are a couple of, you know, future tickets that I would look at. And I still like Vegas and Colorado as 2 teams that I would target to come, you know, to make it to the Western Conference Final. You're going to get a better price now than if you try playing them, you know, further down the road. I just think, you know, these are the 2 best teams in the West. A long shot would be the Los Angeles Kings. You can get them, I think, at about roughly 13-14-1. So there is some value there. And I do like, I'll tell you, I still would bet Ottawa based on the series price. There is value there. And I think Montreal is going to give Washington a tough time. I would look at the Canadiens now before the series starts. And then maybe if you can get plus money on Washington, Greg, I'd consider coming back with the Capitals.
I love it, Jonathan. It's always great to get you aboard, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. Have a great rest of your night.
Great to talk some NHL playoffs. And coming up next, let's take a look at the Sunday baseball card on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Cashing Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. It was great to be joined by Jonathan Davis. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game of hockey. It's always so much fun to be able to take a look at the NHL playoffs. I still think that it's one of the best products that you get in all of sports. I'll always stand by the NCAA tournament being the best postseason that we've got out there in all sports. That's mainly because, well, I'm a college basketball guy at heart, but still, with the NHL playoffs, the passion that you've got, the way that all those guys have their, shall we say, interesting, things that they do with the cup, because everyone gets to spend a day with the cup on the winning team, what have you. I love it all and always love to be able to get Jonathan aboard. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. How about if we dive in on a little bit of baseball now, because we do have ourselves a full slate on Sunday. All 30 teams are going to be in action, and We saw ourselves some very much wackiness in terms of the Major League slate on Saturday, and I think that could be lingering a little bit into Sunday. And how about if we dive in on this game? This is 9-11, 9-12 on the board. You've got the Seattle Mariners facing off against the Toronto Blue Jays with Easton Lucas going for the Jays, and Luis Castillo is on the bump for Seattle. And I wouldn't think that I would need to say this, but I will say this anyway. This is the correct Luis Castillo. You've actually got two Luis Castillos who have made starts for the Seattle Mariners this year. When you say Luis F. Castillo, the F means the not-so-good Luis Castillo. So that's something that you do want to be doing if you're gauging Seattle Mariners games moving forward. But that's with regards to the correct Luis Castillo, right around about a -120 to a -125 favorite. Total on this game, it is 8, and both of these bullpens got burnt here on Saturday because they had that 12-inning game in which things went on and on and on, and I had the under on Saturday. That was not so much fun, to say the least, with a nice grand slam in the 12th inning to push that game over. But Luis Castillo has been having a noticeable velocity dip over the last, we're going to call it about 12 or so months, dating back to the beginning of last year. He just hasn't been his normal self. He is starting to have the walks tick up as well. Here this season, only about 7.5 strikeouts, 4.3 walks per 9 innings. Ever since he got to Seattle, he's had some home and road splits that have been a little bit less than tremendous as well. And I just don't really feel good about buying in on Easton Lucas. He was not good during spring training. He was not good in his tenure with the Oakland A's. He had one or maybe even two good starts, but other than that, he really doesn't impress you. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. His command isn't great. He gives up hard contact. I'm trying to think of good things to say, but they're really not coming here. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, I do believe that this is a offense that's a little bit more reborn. They've got George Springer back after he was dealing with a little bit of an ailment in the earlier weekday series, and he's been hitting well above a 340 for this unit. Bo Bichette, he was injured all throughout last season. Last season was a little bit of a write-off and an outlier from he's back to being his normal self. So you do have to like what he's seeing there. And then additionally for this Toronto Blue Jays team, I think that the guy that they picked up at the trade deadline last season, and Will Wagner, is going to be able to make an impact. And Anthony Santander, right now, stuck on 2 home runs and 290 on base. I think that he's going to be able to pick that up quite a bit. And for Seattle, if you look at their home and road splits on offense, they are very demonstrative. And here's the reason why. I personally do here at the network our baseball betting podcast, which is appropriately called the Baseball Betting Show with Greg Peterson. So very nice, easy to find there. If you're wondering what the baseball betting show is called, it's the Baseball Betting Show. So I always like to be able to have nice and to the point names. But that said, if you look at the Seattle Mariners team, right now they're averaging 3.6 runs per game at home, north of 5 on the road. And the reason why is because I was talking about this with the gentleman that I was mentioning before, Curtis Rogers. It's actually a case where if you look at the ballpark factors in Seattle, it suppresses offense, Seattle does, more so than Coors Field elevates offense. It is that insane. I know that he's talked a little bit about the batter's eye over at T-Mobile Park being just very unfriendly to so many of these right-handed hitters. Ori Polanco was really dealing with it. He's been able to have a nice year thus far for the Seattle Mariners, and just in Seattle in general. You're over there by a body of water as well, so that means that it's a little bit harder to be able to drive the ball out, which is why you notice guys like Big Dumper Cal Raleigh, who had a very nice home run a few days ago. Rowdy Tellez, these guys are able to hit home runs much better when they're on the road rather than when they are at home, which makes me a little bit just befuddled by the fact that they do have so much emphasis on power, not so much on batting average, because I would think that if you're a team like Seattle, you'd want to play a little bit more station-to-station baseball, but I guess that's what they decided on there. Julio Rodriguez has been off to a little bit of rough start to the season, but this is nothing new. Julio Rodriguez, he always gets off to rough starts to the season. The thing that is big for them is the fact that Victor Robles is currently out of the fold. He was really good for them last season, so that's a little bit of an issue, but that said, with both of these bullpens just getting completely burnt, I do think that for the Blue Jays, they're going to be running on too many fumes. I still trust in Easton Lucas much less than I do Luis Castillo, even though Castillo's been experiencing a little bit of velocity dip and hasn't been quite himself over the last few months. I did set the Mariners more around about a mid-120s favorite. I landed on a -128, so I'm going to be willing to back them on the money line. I do feel like the total's too low. Some I told it at 8.6, especially with the heavy bullpen usage that we saw on Saturday. So I do like the over and the money line of the Mariners. And what else I love is the fact that Edge Boost makes sure that you're able to access your funds 24/7, 365. Unlike so many other places, there's no usage fees or there's no minimums. You're able to earn cash cashback rewards when you do utilize Edge Boost. And when you go to edgeboost.bet and utilize the promo code of CASH, CASH, you're able to deposit $25 at Edge Boost. They're going to match that deposit dollar for dollar. That's over at edgeboost.bet, promo code CASH. As it is cashing out with myself, Greg Peterson, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And I think that this game is going to be an intriguing one for this baseball Sunday, as well as we have seen some craziness with regards to the Tampa Bay Rays and the New York Yankees series. You had a 1-0 game on Friday, and then on Saturday you had Devin Williams just pretty much, he blew the game for the New York Yankees. Wish I could call it anything else, but it is what it is, and that's about the most PG way of being able to put it. But now you've got the rubber match between these two for Sunday. This is 9:15, 9:16 on the card, with Mad Max Fried going for the Yankees and Ryan Pepiot, he goes for the Rays. Right now this total is at an 8.5 with relatively equal juice on the over and the under end. With the New York Yankees, going to be finding them in that neighborhood of as low as a -138 here at Circa. I'm finding as high as a -148 elsewhere, and this is a circumstance where with Max Fried, I can only set him as a -122 favorite. You're able to get in pretty much game or places across the board north of a +120 with regards to Tampa Bay Rays. That is my buy point on them. Brian Pepiot, he's been off to a rough start to the season, north of a 5 ERA, swing and miss stuff, still relatively solid. He's been dealing with a little bit of issue in terms of walking a few guys, what have you, but I do think that he's going to be able to find it a little bit more moving forward, as he was rock solid for this Tampa Bay Rays team a season ago. And for the New York Yankees, this team just hasn't been the same offensive team when they've been away from home. Now, they did a very solid job on Saturday. That should have been enough for them to be able to get the job done, the 8 runs that they were able to generate. And very interesting that they're playing at Steinbrenner Stadium this season out there for the Tampa Bay Rays, because it's got very similar ballpark dimensions to what you're going to find out there at Yankee Stadium as well. So that's something that does stand out to me a little bit. So that does help out the Yankees in terms of generating a little bit of offense, but that also helps out the pitchers for the New York Yankees as well, as to know what they're supposed to throw as well. So it sort of works both ways with that regard. I do think that Fried got a little bit of disrespect towards the back half of his tenure over at the Atlanta Braves. Like, this is a guy that's never really posting up north of 3.25 ERA. He's not a super duper power pitcher, but he gives you enough strikeouts to be relatively effective. For his career, about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. That has climbed up to about 10 here thus far this season, but it's a very small sample size, so I'm not going to make too much out of it. But he does a nice job in terms of command with the New York Yankees. They really have to move Devin Williams out of that closer spot. Luke Weaver is a far better closer than Devin Williams. I'm just going to call it what it is. Trust me, I'm someone that grew up a Milwaukee Brewers fan. I know all too well about the playbook of Devin Williams, so you don't need to talk to me about that. And when it comes to the Tampa Bay Rays and what they're able to do in the bullpen, they're just able to mix and match. So many of these guys, like Kevin Kelly, who I know is a little bit injured, Garrett Clevenger, Manuel Rodriguez, you just go down the list of these guys, Pete Fairbanks, that are all able to give you solid innings. Hunter Biggie came in, held down the fort for the team on Saturday. They're just able to do such a masterful job with that bullpen. Then I do think that presents a little bit of value. And the man that hit the walk-off homer on Saturday, Jonathan Aranda, has come from out of nowhere, hitting above a 350 with 4 home runs. And this is a Rays team that was just awful with their offense last season. Part of that is that the Trop was very much a pitcher's ballpark. It's very hard to be able to drive the ball out when you've got an indoor venue like that. That said, with the Tampa Bay Rays, they had a lot of young guys in the lineup as well that it just feels like they've taken a nice stride forward. Like, prior to him going on the injured list, it felt like Johnny DeLuca was giving you a little bit more. Junior Caminero was a guy that I was very high on as a prospect. He's already got 5 bombs. He's hitting about a 280 for this team. Christopher Morel is no longer hitting at the Mendoza line of 200 like he did a season ago as well. So you do have to like what you're seeing there. And overall, I do take a look at this spot. I do think that the Rays are presenting you with some value. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the Tampa Bay Rays on the money line. Did somebody told it at 8.3. So here at the 8.5, I'm going to be willing to dive in on that under as well. This game doesn't warrant much more than the 40 seconds I'm going to give it. The Boston Red Sox, they're going to be playing against the Chicago White Sox. Sean Burke is going for the Southsiders. Sander Oak is on the bump for Boston. Total on this game is 9. And going into the day on Saturday, you had the Chicago White Sox registering fewer than 2.8 runs per game away from home. I recognize that Tanner Oak has been awful this season. He was an all-star, though, last season. I believe that he's going to find it. Sean Burke, throughout his career, has been a little bit shaky, to say the least. Really, what you're betting on in terms of the total is, are the Red Sox going to get to 7+ runs? I voted no. I wrote this up for the website, VSiN.com is where you will find that article. I'm in on the under, and with the Boston Red Sox, would be willing to lay that -135 run line. And coming up next, let's take a look at some playoff action right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We've got so much happening in the sports calendar right now because I know that a lot of people think that when you get into football season, it's best time of year, and we technically are in football season because we've got like the USFL/XFL going on with all that fun stuff. I get to call it what it is, spring football, not the same as NFL football, but you know what? You've got the NBA playoffs, you've got the NHL playoffs, you get pretty much 15 games of baseball, 5 out of 7 days, every single day of the week, so you absolutely love all that, and we do have ourselves some intrigue with regards to the NBA playoffs as well. I don't do as much in terms of the NHL playoffs. That's a big reason why 30 minutes ago we had Jonathan Davis aboard on the show. If you missed any of that, vsin.com/podcast. Every single hour of every single show, it is posted up in the VSiN Bets feed. So we had him do a great job of being able to break down the action that we're going to be seeing on Sunday. And I do want to take a little bit of time to take a look at the NBA front again with myself and betting on the NBA playoffs. I do quite a bit of it. The only thing is I really don't bet it before the game. I am very much someone that is trying to extract value during the game. I'm looking for, I like to call them dumpster dive spots. Like when a team gets down 15 points, something like that, you get like a 5-point difference in terms of live line, things like that. Those are the things I really look to extract when I feel like, oh, this team is down and I think that they're going to be able to come back. It's been a little bit of a lucky run for a team or something like that. And sometimes it's the exact opposite. Sometimes you're just watching a game and you're just sitting there thinking, man, this team is going to be getting nicknamed Hickory on this night because they are getting absolutely smoked. There are just some times like that as well. Like I was watching that Mavericks versus LA Lakers, or the Timberwolves versus the LA Lakers game tonight, and I nearly called them the Dallas Mavericks because of the Luka Doncic trade, because man, that did not go well for the Dallas Mavericks. They were the textbook definition of Hickory because they did get smoked in that trade. But that said, I was watching the game tonight and I was thinking, man, I really want to take a shot on the LA Lakers, but I just can't do it. And yeah, we saw exactly what happened there. They lose by 22 points in that one. Obviously, we did see what happened as well in the New York Knicks games, where if you took a shot on that money line, if you took a shot on the spread at any point with the New York Knicks when they were down in that game, you were very much handsomely rewarded as well. They actually come back to cover the closing line of right around -6.5, -7 or so there. But I do think that that is something that is very important to be doing. And even in these games with higher spreads, I do think that there is a little bit of value with that. I remember we had Jim Turvey on about an hour or so ago. He does great work over at Roto Grinders. The one game that he was watching for was this Orlando Magic versus Boston Celtics game, and I do think that it's interesting that he brought this one up with the Celtics right now being pretty much across the board a 13.5 point favorite. And what I think is going to be intriguing about this one is also that total, because this is a pretty low total of a 205.5. You just don't find that at NBA games in this day and age, albeit you now have the playoffs, so the defense is going to be ratcheted up a little bit. Every possession is just a little bit more meaningful, but you know what? I do take a look at the spot, and I do think that there's a chance for the Orlando Magic to be able to hold in there. The Magic weren't necessarily too bad on the road this season. I recognize that for the Orlando Magic, they're going to be fighting very much an uphill battle, but when you do have the stars that you do on this roster with Paolo Banchero and all of this he's been able to do this season, and he was obviously banged up, him being able to be fully healthy, and he had that nice 17-point performance against the Atlanta Hawks in the play-in to be able to get here. That does speak to me a little bit, and that's something that you do always want to be taking a look at. Which teams are starting to peak a little bit late with regards to just any sport, whether that be the NFL playoffs. Obviously, with regards to the NCAA tournament, that's where it's very much supreme as well. And I recognize that in terms of back half of the season for the Orlando Magic, they were playing some just, for one, outgunned teams, and two, maybe a team or two like the Boston Celtics when they played against them, that they were just resting up guys, making sure that they were all good and ready for the playoffs. But the fact that they were able to go out there, win 5 out of their last 6 games before that play-in win against the Atlanta Hawks, and the lone loss that they had was actually against the Atlanta Hawks prior to that playing game, where things weren't necessarily meaningful on that front. I do think that that speaks to me a little bit in terms of this team starting to come into their own. They did a very good job in terms of utilizing their draft picks over the last few seasons, albeit this is a bunch of Obviously, they are dealing with a few injuries with Mo Wagner, dealing with the injury to himself now. You've got his brother France, who's been able to do a really good job in terms of being able to step up for the team, but also being able to have Cole Anthony be able to step up towards the back half of the season. That's been meaningful as well. So I do take a look at this team, and I think that they could be a little bit pesky. Now, I do think that the Celtics should be able to get the job done, and they're going to be able to win this series. I would probably think in 5 games. Like, maybe the Orlando Magic steal one out there in the state of Florida, but man, they're really up against it. And you do want to be keeping your eyes on Jaylen Brown in game number 1 as well. Apparently, he's been able to practice fully. There should be no restrictions with him, but I mean, that whole Jaylen Brown injury situation has been one that's been a little bit mysterious, so that's something that I certainly have my eyes on, but there shouldn't be any, shall we say, limitations with him. The Celtics, they did a nice job making sure that they were able to get a little bit rested up in their final few games, and also did help that their final 2 games were against the Charlotte Hornets, so they were able to get wins while still being able to give these guys quite a bit of rest as well, so that was good for the Boston Celtics, but I do take a look at this spot. It's something to where if the Orlando Magic get down early, I'm going to be a little bit less discouraged about taking a little bit of a better number on them rather than perhaps the other 2 games involving double-figure spreads. Like with the Miami Heat, this is a team that they just pretty much ran backwards into the playoffs. They had no intentions of being able to make the playoffs after they traded away Jimmy Butler, but here they are pretty much by default because someone had to make the playoffs from the Eastern Conference, and you also have yourself a bunch in the Memphis Grizzlies that I just don't know what to make out of them when you can your coach as late in the season as they did, and I mean, those are 2 really intriguing teams. Like with the Memphis Grizzlies along with the Denver Nuggets, the fact that they can their coach so late into the season is just something that you don't see. Like, I still remember when the Milwaukee Brewers did it many, many years ago, because this is the only way that I'm able to relate to this. I'm someone that was born and raised in the state of Wisconsin. When they fired Ned Yost just before they made the playoffs, they were able to win, I believe, like 1 game in the playoffs, and they were able to still make the playoffs, but that's not something that worked out. Like, I don't remember any scenario where it's like, oh, thank goodness, we fired the coach with 5 games left in the regular season. That created a bonsai charge into the playoffs. I don't know what they're expecting here. Like, are they just trying to get a jump start in terms of the coaching cycle for the next year, which they really can't jump on right now? You could be able to do it in college basketball, because in college basketball right now, there's just no rules with regards to transfer portal, with regards to coaches, what have you. You've got just happy action fun time all the way across the board. But in the NBA, you've got actual, I don't know, structure, rules, restrictions, what have you. So I don't know quite what's happening there, but that said, I would be feeling a little bit more comfortable about being able to take a little bit of shot on the Orlando Magic rather than, say, the Miami Heat or the Memphis Grizzlies. But certainly something that I'm going to be parsing through and looking at on Sunday. And something else that we're looking at is the NFL Draft. We're going to be hitting that a little bit more in hour number 3 with Sean Green of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And the draft, it does start on Thursday, and VSiN knows that every pick matters. Tune in for some special live shows breaking down every single pick from a betting perspective. VSiN Prime Time, that special is going to be starting at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. That is going to be on the night of the draft on Thursday. That is going to be followed by a nice edition of Cashing Out at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time as well. Plus, you've got our exclusive NFL Draft Hub on the VSiN Watch app featuring exclusive analysis and team needs and insights. Visit VSiN.com/draft for full coverage and stream it all live on the VSiN Watch app. And we've got ourselves a lot to be taking a look at there. Like I said, we'll be hitting that a little bit more in hour number 3, but what if we do it a little bit of baseball as well? Just because we've got ourselves a lot that is going to be happening on Sunday. All 30 teams are going to be in action, and this is my main bread and butter sport, to be honest, here with regards to the spring sports. I'm very much a man of routine. When college basketball ends, baseball for me begins, and when baseball ends, college basketball begins. So it keeps me busy all 12 months out of the year, and I would say that if you're a little bit of a newer better out there looking to dive into some sports that you're able to specialize in, try to be able to parse it out with regards to just sectors of the calendar. You don't want to be finding yourself like doubling up or tripling up with regards to sports, and then you have like 6 months where you're doing absolutely nothing. I would say try to be able to have one focus, and that's what I look to do. But we are focused on this game between the Cardinals and the New York Mets. This is 9:03, 9:04 on the card with the Metropolitans throwing out their Clay Holmes and Sonny Gray. He does go for the St. Louis Cardinals. Right now with the Cardinals, so you're going to be getting them right around about a plus 120 to a plus 126, minus 135, minus 142, that number on the Mets. A lot of places have a total of 7.5. I'm seeing as low as a 7 out there, and especially on the 7, I'm willing to go over. For Sonny Gray, ever since getting to St. Louis, he's had very demonstrative home and road splits. When he is on the road, his ERA goes north of 5, and on the road since joining the St. Louis Cardinals, he comes up north of 1.8 home runs per 9 innings. That falls to about 0.8 home runs per 9 innings when he's at home. That home ERA hovering more around about a 3. And for Clay Holmes, he does knock himself out of starts early. Like, the strikeout numbers have been great as a starter for the New York Mets. He's getting north of 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's also giving up 5 walks per 9. Now, I will say with the New York Mets, this has been the top under team in all of baseball thus far this season. North of 2/3 of their games have gone under the total thus far. A lot of that has been because of the not so great weather out there in New York, and it's not like it's going to be amazing hitting conditions on Sunday, but I do think that the hitting conditions are relatively fine. I do think that for the Mets, you're getting some relatively okay value here. With regards to the Mets, I set them more around about a minus 138, so seeing that minus 136 or so, I'm willing to dive in on that money line, and I'm willing to trust in the over as well. And coming up to lead off hour number 3 right here on Cash It Out, we take a look at the playoffs, and we take a look at some regular season baseball right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.